Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Matters of Faith, the radio show. Matters of Faith is a show designed to bring issues of interest to you, the listening and viewing audience, that will put a biblical perspective on everyday issues.
Good
I am
evening,
your
everybody,
host,
and
the
welcome
Reverend
to
Dr.
Matters
J.
of Faith,
Lauren Russell,
the radio show.
and it is my
Matters of
job
Faith
to engage
is a
you in
show designed
stimulating
to bring
dialogue,
issues of interest to
dialogue
you,
that's
the
inspiring
listening
and viewing
encouraging
audience, and motivating, dialogue and conversations that will help you build your determination, your commitment, and your character, conversations that will help you keep the faith. Everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, without further ado, it is time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. It's Monday, January 27th, 2025, the last Monday in January of the year. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. I am your executive producer and your host, Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and tonight we're talking about the article and the topic, Restoration, from one transgressor to another. Matters of Faith is broadcasting live on our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. We're also live on our Facebook groups, J. Lauren Russell and the Matters of Faith Facebook groups. Tonight, my very special guest is the Matters of Faith family. That's you. So telephone and tell a friend they don't want to miss the show tonight. From one transgressor to another, restoration. Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting, LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan. You need your trustees to be trained. Restoration. You need biblical economic training. You need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. Just as a soft reminder, please subscribe, like, and share the Matters of Faith YouTube channel. The link's right before you. And also, I want to invite you to be my guest at the Evangelical Church of God. Any first or third Sunday, we're in person. And the church is located at 1205 Washington Avenue in the Bronx, New York. That's 1205 Washington Avenue in the Bronx, New York. Our services start at 1 p.m. You can also join us on Zoom any Sunday at 873-6003-1163. Let me give you that link again. Zoom ID 873-6003-1163. You're welcome to join us any one of those Sundays in person or virtually. Please, ma'am, please, sir, govern yourselves accordingly. You are invited. And now, Matters of Faith family, the article, Restoration, from one transgressor to another. That article can be found in all of my social media links. That's Facebook, that's X, that is Blue Sky, that's LinkedIn, and anywhere else where you can Google me, you can find the article. I also sent it to many of you individually. But if you didn't, you can also find it in the Yonkers Insider, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. The column is also carried in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column is also carried in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter. Restoration, from one transgressor to another. Psalms 51 verses 10 through 13, New King James Version. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me by your generous spirit. Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners shall be converted to you. Restoration, from one transgressor to another. King David thought he got away with having an adulterous relationship with Bathsheba that resulted in her getting pregnant. To cover his tracks, he had her husband Uriah positioned on the front line of the war where he was killed. He then married Bathsheba, thinking that would shield him further. He was right. No one knew the treacherous things he did. In the eye of the public, he was viewed as a just and upright king. But there was a set of eyes watching him that he failed to consider. Those were the eyes that sees everything and everybody. Those were the eyes of God. 2 Samuel 11:27 tells us, quote, the thing David did displeased the Lord, unquote. Chapter 12 verses 1 through 15 picks up with the prophet Nathan, who was sent to meet with King David. In that meeting, Nathan informs David that God knew what he did, and that he was going to be punished because of his dastardly deeds. The 51st Psalm shows David confessing his sin, grieving his actions, and asking the Lord to forgive him. It is an intense plea that includes David asking the Lord to create within him a clean heart and renew a steadfast spirit within him. David is asking for a gut rehab, an entire transformation, inside and out. Quote, restore to me the joy of your salvation, unquote, references the series of sin he committed that resulted in him being spiritually demolished and losing the joy of his salvation. He hadn't lost God's love, that is, his soul's salvation, but he lost the joy that comes along with knowing that your soul has been saved. Restoration is a renewal, a rejuvenation, a rebirth. David was asking to be made over and the joy of his salvation restored. Being held up by the generosity of the Lord's graciousness, he commits to teaching other sinners of his love and graciousness, and they too would come to believe in the Lord as he had. A restoration of epic proportion is what David requested. That restoration would not only benefit David, but would be shared by one transgressor to another in the centuries to follow. Millions and millions of transgressors, would have the joy of their salvation restored, and they too would teach other transgressors the Lord's way. This lesson is for you. Now, it's your turn. Be blessed. And now, here's my question, and I am making an assumption. Now that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? Let me ask that question again. And again, I am making an assumption. Now that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressions the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? There's no introduction that is needed tonight. You, the Matters of Faith family, are my special guests tonight. And so here I am, and here you are. Thank God. Hallelujah. God bless you. Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules tonight to be with us on Matters of Faith. And when I say us, I mean you and I mean me. Us, you and us, my Matters of Faith family. I'm so grateful to you this evening. I really am. I'm going to stop my share. It's just so you don't have to look at that for the rest of the evening, but we'll come back to it at the right and proper time. But I do want to thank you. Thank you for being a part of the show tonight. Thank you for reading your article, and I pray that everything will be to your satisfaction. I'm here tonight essentially by myself, but it's you. I'm never by myself because I'm always with you, and I always have my friend who sticks closer than a brother. So I'm always happy to have Christ on my side. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope that you had an opportunity to read the article. I really do. It was inspired. The Lord gave it to me literally as a result of me doing, I had to speak on Saturday. And I was asked by one of our former viewers. She used to watch all the time. As a matter of fact, she was with us when we were doing this on radio. She would call in on a regular basis. I hadn't spoken to her in a long time, and she called me and she invited me to speak at her church. And I had to speak about restoration. And that was the inspiration for the article today. Now, nobody knew that except Sister Parker, Sister Regina Parker, who's the one who invited me. I'm so grateful to her for having invited me and for the inspiration for the article and for the sermon topic on the day. Now, if you didn't have a chance to read it, I hope that you heard me when I read it. But the article is very interesting. The article is very interesting. It's very challenging because it talks about David. Now, most of you know David. You know something about David. In my conclusion this evening, I'm going to share with you what I shared in my sermon on yesterday, which really delves into the history of David and all that he was. You know that he was a man after God's own heart. But what I really was looking at in this article is the fact that he asked to be restored. He asked to be restored. He requested of God that he create within him a clean heart and renew a right spirit within him. That's not easy to do. That's not easy to do. To humble yourself to the point that you're asking God to forgive you of everything that you've ever done, to wash me. And when he said wash, he wasn't talking about just sort of, throwing it in the laundry or putting it in the washing machine. No, no, this is the old kind of washing when they used to have to beat the rug and beat the cloth in order to get the dirt out. I mean, David wanted to be beaten. He wanted to be cleansed. He wanted to be, in his words, as white as snow. Not complexion, but in his spirit. He wanted to be pure. And so he requested of the Lord to be made whole, to be made clean, to have a clean heart. That was his request. Now, I made some presumptions. The question that I asked tonight, now that you've been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? Well, that's a question that you need to answer. And my presumption is that you have been restored, that you have been broken, and that you sought repair. And restoration is really a reconstruction. It is a rehab. It is to take something that once was in good use, that had fallen into disrepair, and to rebuild it all over again so that it's habitable. Just think about that. The prayer was that his house, this thing that we call life, would be habitable again. Because he thought he got away with all the sins that he ever committed, forgetting about this one who watches and sees everything. Nothing gets by him. Now, the assumption, of course, is that you had something to build on in the first place. You can't rehab something that never was in existence. If you don't have a foundation, if you don't have a foundation of faith that's been built on, that been laid, if you will, then how can you build on something that's not in existence? Some of us need to start from the foundation and then build ourselves up, because you may not need to be restored. You may need to be constructed. And if that's you, or if that's someone that you know, then that means that what they have to do is they have to literally commit themselves to the Lord, to give their lives over to the Lord so that they would be able to become. Jesus said, I make you to become. And in so doing, he builds us, he makes us, he molds us, he shapes us, he creates within us. he begins to work with us so that we become fashioned like him. I don't think anybody that listens to Matters of Faith, because this is a deep dive. This is a deep dive into the realm of theology. So I take whatever the scripture is and we do a deep dive. So I don't think people kind of listen to this show or watch this production, watch this broadcast, who are completely novice to the idea of following Christ, because this is a way to develop your faith. I think this show is kind of devised and designed to help people to come to recognize, but then to also get to know who God really is and all of his complexities or mysteries. For those who don't believe, it's a mystery. For those who do, it's a story. And what I want to do is unpack the story, to unravel it, to make it more understandable so that we can apply it in our everyday life. Because if we can't apply the word, then we just read another story, another happily ever after. But that only happens. That only happens when you have that deep and intimate and personal relationship with the creator, the architect, the designer of the universe, and every one of us. So here's how we're going to proceed tonight, because it's just me. So I have no one to bounce off of, if you will. So what I want you to do is I want you to begin engaging in conversation with me on Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, to engage in the chat. Now, I posed a question, as you know, now that you've been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? But of course, beyond that, you may have a question. You may have something that you want to share. Well, that's how we're going to play this tonight. If you simply share with me what's going on in your life, share with me what's going on in your heart, then I will bounce off of and use your conversation as a way of furthering this discussion. Okay? I don't want to be a talking head. I can talk, but that's not what I want to do. I want a dialogue. And even though I don't have a guest, we can still dialogue. You are my guests. So if you have a question, if you have a statement, if you have something that you want to share, if you have a testimony, then all of that, put it in the chat box. Now, in some instances, if you're using your phone, do you know that you can actually go on your phone and go to chat, and you can actually use the microphone there and speak into that system, and that system will respond to you by writing down what you said, and then you just push send and it'll come to me. So you don't have to be the typist. You don't have to do all of that. All you have to do is literally use the technology that's already embedded in there. I think there is I think, I don't see it. I don't see it in the Zoom. So you may have to type it in, but I'm almost certain that there's one um, in Facebook that you can use that will pop up, and you can use that. But you let me know whether or not it works. If it doesn't work, then we'll just work on something else. But I'm watching, I'm monitoring, I'm watching everything that's being said. So if you say it, if you write it, I'm going to see it. Okay? If you write it, I'm going to see it. So I'm going to give you all on Facebook now, just a little welcome. Just to let you know that I am watching. See, I can't type either, so you're not in bad shape. You got good company. Uh, I really can't type. I failed that class. Not a brag, just facts. Just facts. Okay. So I'm monitoring both. I'm watching Facebook. I'm watching the Zoom. So whatever you say, I'm kind of watching them both. Okay. So I need your support so that I can have a dialogue and not a monologue. Is that fair? Good. Good, 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 good. So let me then share with you a couple of things. I'm going to go back for a moment to the article that I wrote, and I want to share some of that with you. Little bits and pieces, if you will. King David thought that he got away with having an adulterous relationship with Bathsheba. It resulted in her getting pregnant, by the way, but you know that to cover his tracks. He had a husband come home and he tried to trick him into going home and sleeping with his wife so that he thought that the child that would have been born would have been his, but he didn't do that. And so he made arrangements to have Uriah placed way up in the front where all of the violence was taking place in the war so that he would be killed. It was a plan. It was a plot. And when Uriah was killed, after the mourning period was over, David married Bathsheba and made her one of his wives. Okay, this is a man after God's own heart. So why do I like David so much? I like David because David is a lot like me. David is someone who has been through the fire and been through the storm. And David is someone who literally has sort of felt the pain and the sorrow of being a sinner, of someone who's turned his back on the Lord or thinking that he could get away with stuff. He's a lot like you and he's a lot like me. Yeah. Yeah. Like nobody will find out. It's just me. Nobody. And that's the thing that we have in common. We were all born in sin, shaped in iniquity. None of us can claim to be righteous on our own. So, Andrew, thank you, my brother. God has restored me back to sanity upon a many years that I was out there in the world with my addiction. My flesh would not let my spirit come out until I sought to help, and now I'm ready to help anyone. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about, right? You see, you have to have come from somewhere to be where you are. You have to be somewhere, anytime and all the time. You're somewhere. God's not concerned about where you come from, concerned about where you're going. Every saint has a past, but every sinner has a future. So if we begin to think about what it is that we are being molded for, because we're being shaped, molded. That's what the restoration is about. Every time, if you look at a building that's being rehabilitated, if you could go inside, you would see some spectacular things happening. First of all, you might see it being completely demolished. That all of the things that were there, the walls, the doors, the windows, all of those things are being changed. They may still have the holes for the windows and the hole for the door, but the framing is going to be different. The the sheetrock is going to be different. The walls are not going to be in the same place. They may change some of the configurations. They have to maintain the structural walls because that's what holds the building in place. But they can change everything else. So if you lived in the apartment before, if you lived in that building, when you come back, you may not even recognize it because it has changed so much. That's the restoration process. And if you restore it to its old facade, let's assume that you did everything so that it would look exactly like it looked before, it's still going to be different because it's going to be different material, different way of constructing it. It's going to be different. The um, uh, landmark commission, they're the ones who designate a building. And that designation says that you can't change anything about this building. It has to always look this way. So that means that if you want to rehabilitate it, if you want to rehab it, if you want to, it has to be restored to its original look. It takes a lot of more money to restore it to its original condition, as opposed to just simply ripping out everything that was and replacing it with something new. Because if you're going to restore it to its original look, then that means that you're going to have to get the same materials that were used in some instances as close to the original as possible. Makes restoration that much more difficult, but it's not impossible. But with God, God can restore us all. He can restore us to our, but you understand that if he restores you to your original, and your original was not based upon a relationship with him, he can't restore you to your original because the original is not what it should have been. So he has to change you. David could be restored because David had that intimate relationship with the Lord. He was one to one with him. So he could be restored to his original condition. Take me back to where I first believed. He did that. So with Andrew, and I'm glad that he put this with Andrew. I used to call him Watson so much. It's funny calling him Andrew, but when Andrew went through his addiction, and then he tried to do it in the flesh when he couldn't do it. But when he was restoration, he was restored because he had a foundation that his parents and grandparents laid in him that was allowed. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what in my mind, this is what I remember. The foundation was laid so the Lord could come back and restore him because he had a foundation on which to build. Now, that doesn't rule you out if you don't have a foundation, because the Lord says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So he will build your foundation. He will create your foundation immediately upon your confession of faith. The foundation is laid. So you're not out. You're not discounted because you didn't have a relationship with the Lord when you were a child. Heck, I didn't really have a relationship with the Lord when I was a child. I mean, I might have, but I don't know if that I had. I do have a Bible that was given to me on my 10th birthday. I still have that. And so I was introduced to, and I knew who Jesus was. I knew who the Lord was, but that doesn't mean that I had a relationship with him. It means that I knew who he was. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I knew who he was. So my question tonight, again, because I have no guest, it's you. You are the guest. So I need you to sort of feed, because my best interviews, my best conversations come when I'm talking to somebody. Now that you have been restored, now that you've been reconstructed, now that you have been rebuilt, now that you have been rehabbed, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? Now, again, you may have a story, you may have a statement like Andrew did, and he shared with us his background, what happened to him in terms of his addiction. But now that the Lord has restored him, he has been able to now help any and everybody. And he responds, my mother started the foundation a long time ago when I was a youngster. She kept me in church. You see, I was right. I told you, I know. Spirit recognizes spirit. Now, you got to remember, Watson and I go back over 40 years. I've known him for over 40 years. We worked together. And it was seems like yesterday. We worked together. And while he was going through his addictions, I was going through my transformations as well. I wasn't addicted, but I was dabbing all the time and everything. And then trying to find out who I was. I don't know if you've ever been there before. I don't know if you know what that's like, trying to find out who you are, searching to find the one, me. Not what other people said, but who I say I am, who God says I am, who I was created to be, not to do, not to do. I'm going to make that real clear. Not to do. It wasn't about me doing. It was about me being. I had to find out who I am so that I can then be who God created me to be, so that I can then do what he needs me to do. And it is the same way with you. If you don't know who you are, you may be doing a lot of things, but it's kind of like, spinning in circles. You're doing a lot of stuff. It's like a hamster on a treadmill, on that wheel, that hamster wheel, doing a lot of work, but you ain't going nowhere. The only way you can get to go anywhere is when you are in the Lord's will and you're doing his work. Then you can get off the treadmill and you can get busy, because the busyness is not just to keep you active, but to accomplish what God has set before you. Restored, restoration, purpose, understanding, knowing now what it is that I can do. Am I always successful at it? Absolutely not. No, 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 no. In fact, I still have more failures than I do successes. But I look at my failures as stepping stones, not as stumbling blocks. And there's an old saying that people who are successful fail more times than unsuccessful people are even willing to attempt. And that doesn't mean that, that there's a lot of money coming in. None of that. That's not it. Success is not measured by money. Success is not measured by the things that you acquire. Success is measured by the things that you give. The more you give, the more you receive. Good measure, pressed down, shaking together, and running over. Dr. King, and I'm mentioning him because I'm going to play a little clip from him later on. But Dr. King did something that was highly unusual and very demanding. And quite a few people followed his lead in this area, nonviolence. Many of us today can't understand how you could let somebody beat you and not respond. And Dr. King said that it's the most effective way of getting people to change. It's through nonviolence. I don't think that message translates very well in today's language, because if we look around our communities, violence seems to be dominant. We're killing each other left and right. We're destroying one another left and right. I got a telephone call this morning from a colleague and a friend who I did some work with. She's actually a alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent. She called me because she relocated to the South. I won't tell you where, but I'll just tell you that she relocated to the South. And she called me and asked me, would I participate in a meeting, and she'll let me know when, in the South, because they're going to establish a program or an initiative similar to what we were doing up here, an initiative called Ceasefire. I don't call it a program because a program indicates that you have to go and do something particular. But this was an initiative. It was a collaborative effort, law enforcement and community, faith community, local community, to intervene and stop the violence. And it was a collaboration of everyone. I'm talking about district attorney, correction, probation, parole, police department, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, U.S. Department of Justice, the Southern District of the U.S. Attorney's Office,
myself as a minister and a member of the community, all of us combining to say to the community, to our young people in particular, the violence has got to stop. And also community-based organizations that put resources on the table to help to provide resources so that there will be an alternative to the violence that they were engaging in. And somehow or another, that initiative began to lose steam. I thought we were making good progress. But she called me and said that they're going to start a very similar program initiative in the South. And I'm so delighted. It's anything that we can do to preserve life and to help people to be restored to what they once were, to be constructed in the way that they can be productive, to be guided, to be led, to be placed on the pathway of righteousness. I'm happy about that. I'm excited about that because that means that the work that was done early, the foundation that was laid, the restoration is taking place and it's spreading. It's going north and it's going south, it's going east, it's going west. And I shared with her that I was in Bermuda and I met with an elected minister, and I met with the guy who's responsible for overseeing gang violence in Bermuda. And we talked about strategies to mitigate those things so that we can preserve life, restoration. From one transgressor, that would be me, to another, that might be you. From one transgressor to another. That's what we're doing. We're building this thing. We have to continue to do it. And I don't care if you feel that it's not working, that maybe your efforts are being wasted, that you could spend your time doing something else, or maybe just relax. And I can't tell you how many times I've thought about just relaxing and saying, you know what, that's that. I'm getting older now. You know, I can do some other things. I can spend time doing some things that are not so engaging, but you know what? I can't do that. Gabriel Garcia Marquez said, it is not true that people stop pursuing dreams because they grow old. They grow old because they stop pursuing dreams. And I've heard it said in different ways. You don't grow old because you stop dancing, or you don't grow old because you're dancing. You grow old because you stop dancing. I've heard a lot of variations to that. But we grow old when we stop dreaming, when we stop pursuing, when we stop living up to the great expectations that God has for us, and not finding the jewels and the gems and the gold that he's hidden in us, that he wants us to mine and get out. We all have gifts, tremendous gifts, amazing gifts that make us rich beyond our wildest dreams. And many of us take those jewels, that wealth, to the richest place on the planet, the cemetery. Many people die with their wealth still in them. I think it was Wayne Dyer said, don't die with your song still in you. Sing your song. Do your thing. When you were restored, help others to be restored also. It's much more fun when there's more than one. So bring them with you. You know, Andrew and I said, we go back 40 years or more. In fact, I left Manhattan State Hospital where we used to work together in 1982. That's when I left. And I think that's when we stopped being co-workers because we worked on the same ward at the time. So 1982, how long ago was that? 82, 92, 02, 12, 22. Yeah, that's 43 years ago. So we're talking 45 years, 46 years. So what I'm saying to you is that when we reconnected, it was like joy because we reconnected in the place that God had prepared for us. We reconnected at church. We reconnected at church. So while we were going through our developmental and restoration processes, when we were restored, we met in the place where restoration takes place. That's the jewel. That's the joy. That's the love. That's God's omnipotence. He's all powerful. And he brings us back. And he gives us a reminder of who he is and how much he loves us when he brings us back to where we first began, to where we started, and he restores us. And it doesn't matter what you went through in the process. It doesn't matter that you drug addicted, alcohol addicted, abuser, whatever your violation was, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You may still have to pay for the consequences of your actions. You may still have to do that. I know that some of my friends that were drug addicted and they were addicted to the needle, that many of them developed liver problems and other kinds of things, and hepatitis and things of that nature. They had to still pay for their consequences or the consequences of their actions. But watch this. They were still forgiven and restored. And if they took their last breath and left the land of the dying, they made it into the land of the living. God doesn't leave us forsaken. He only looks at us because he loves us and grants us all of these opportunities, always looking for an opportunity to be gracious to us. And all of that shows up in restoration. A rehabilitation process doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes time. You sometimes have to take everything out in order to build it back up. Restoration takes time. So don't get impatient because God is working on you. Don't get impatient. It takes time. I cooked dinner the other night. Yeah, I did. I did. Well, no, I'm still here, right? So I guess it was okay. But I got some chicken cutlets, and I did what I was supposed to do with them, and I massaged them, and I put all the ingredients in the bag, and I did the shake and bake and that kind of thing. But I fried them this time. But they were good. They were good. But I did that. I did that. But I knew that when I first put it in the pan, it wasn't like going to a restaurant and I sit down and when they bring you the plate, the food's already cooked. It's prepared. No, I had to take the time to prepare it. Restoration takes time. Now I say that because I'm not a cook. Trust me, I'm not a cook. I do breakfast. That's just about it. I do breakfast. I don't do no dinners, but I did breakfast. And so I'm literally proud of myself because I did that. And by the way, Watson, he's my balance tonight, right? When I met up with Reverend Russell, I met you at Goodwill Baptist Church. I was there for a funeral for one of the members that was in the Marine Corps, and his name Gabby, and I think that means Granby. And that was a big funeral service. Deacon David Granby, if I'm not mistaken, and Deacon Granby was actually, one of my Sunday school, he was my assistant Sunday school teacher at Goodwill. And now this is a good story. This is a really good story. I knew Granby. We talked a lot. In fact, when I went back to school for my college degree, it inspired him, and he went back to school, same school. And I was so proud of him for doing that, because we were not spring chickens. We were both, he was older than I am, so he's a little older. But yeah, he was a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps. I never knew this until he passed, that he had 3 or 4 Purple Hearts. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4, but he had 3 or 4 Purple Hearts. I never knew that, because he never talked about that. He never bragged about that. That's not something he thought enough of to talk about. He did it. But then there was something else that he did that I did not know. That he had a Bible study and a class that he taught every single week. I mean, 2 or 3 times a week, every week, of ex-Marines and other veterans that he would work with, and introduce them and work with them so that their souls could be redeemed. Now, you can verify that for me, Andrew, if that was you, because I was so moved by that, because it was not something that he talked about. It was not something that he went around boasting and bragging about. He simply did it. He was an ambassador for Christ. And I got to tell you, that homegoing service was a beautiful display of love. And his wife was gracious enough to ask me if I would be the worship leader for that homegoing service. And I was so honored to do that. So honored. And his wife has gone on now to be with the Lord as well. But his brother and I are good friends. His brother and I are great friends. His brother's a minister. I see him on a regular basis. I will see him tomorrow night, God willing, at the Baptist Ministers Evening Conference of the Bronx and vicinity. And we meet at Mount Bethel Baptist Church right here in the Boogie Down Bronx. In fact, for those of you who care to, I will be the preacher on next week. And that's located at 698 Portland Avenue in the Bronx. That's between 152nd and 151st. If I'm not, let me see, 49, 150, 153rd and 154th Street on Cortland Avenue. I will be the preacher for the evening. We meet at 7:30. The preacher gets up normally about between 8:30 and 8:45. So if you have nothing to do, or if you simply want to come be a part of that worship service, I would love to see you. It's, again, next Tuesday evening, the 5th, the first Tuesday in February. I will be what we call the order of the day. I will be the preacher for that evening. He had 4 Purple Hearts. 4. He was in my Vietnam veteran group that we held every Monday night. I'm talking about Granby now. That we held every Monday evening, every Monday night. I was amazed, because I think the entire right side, or if you're walking in the church on the left side, were veterans. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen. A testament to who he was. He left a mark, an indelible mark. So, yep. So watch this. Restoration brought Andrew and I back together because the restoration took place through Granby. And by the way, his first name, David. And that's what we're talking about tonight. David. 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 You can't make this stuff up, y'all. You can't make this stuff up. This is real. This is the way God works. This is the way that God functions. It's the way he operates. He makes it clear. It's not a mystery. It's his story. His story. And so when we figure that out, you can look back, just look back over your life, and you'll see a thread. You'll see a thread that just keeps coming, and it weaves itself through your life. And you'll look, if you look at the thread carefully, you will see that God has been a part of your life all of the time, weaving and pulling all of the loose ends together. And as you come back and as he restores you, he begins to show you this beautiful mosaic with all of the things that's happened in your life that they now have shaped and molded and made you into who you are today. That's restoration. That's restoration. That's what takes time. But while you're going through it, he's also giving you opportunities to exhibit it, to show it, to be a blessing to those near and far. Look at your friendships. Look at those who are around you. Look at how they draw others into your circles of influence. And look at how things merge. Now, remember, I hadn't seen Andrew in like 25 years at that time. 25 years or more. Yet through one child of God, introduced to another child of God, brought the three of us together. And now, because of Granby's restoration, there's a connection that won't be broken anymore between Andrew and I. You got to look at this. You got to see how God works this out. He's an amazing God. This is not by accident, it's by design. 3 rows, veterans. I think it might have been more, but because I remember that left side being pretty crowded. And they walked in, military fashion. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And they walked into, I think it was America the Beautiful was playing. And they walked in. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. It was an experience for me. David was a good friend, dear friend. So, yep. So my question again, I'm going to ask it again, keep asking it. Now that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? How are you doing that? We're almost at the top of the hour. At the top of the hour, we're going to go back and, we'll read the article again so that you're familiar with it if you haven't read it yet. If not, remember that it's on my Facebook page. It's on my Twitter page. It's on my Blue Sky page, which is a different Twitter, right? So it's there, Blue Sky. If you don't have it, subscribe to Blue Sky. It is on my LinkedIn page, J. Lauren Russell. So you can find it on Matters of Faith, the Facebook page, the Facebook group. You can find it on J. Lauren Russell, the Facebook page, the Facebook group, Friends of J. Lauren Russell. You can find it on several of those media outlets. So if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, please do. And if you didn't get the link that I sent you directly, if you don't know anything else, just go to the not the Bronx Chronicle, but the Yonkers Insider, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com, and you'll find it there. Okay? So there's many ways to do it. There's plenty of ways to find it. If you don't know anything else, if you know Mr. Google, then Google J. Lauren Russell, and you probably find the article as well. Okay? So any other stories? I want to hear something else. I want to hear some more stuff. I want to hear some more from you. I really do. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your answers to the question. And I really want you to engage in this conversation because I really want to hear and I want to see what it is and how it is that the Lord is restoring you. Because I know he is. And by the way, we're not finished. We'll never finish being restored. We're always in the process. We will never complete the process until we go from time to eternity. Then the process is complete. Speaking of which, please keep my dear friend Lorraine Royal in your prayers. Her husband and one of my mentors, Reverend Robert Royal, went home to be with the Lord on Saturday. And Reverend Royal was an amazing man. Been on the battlefield a long time, was good friends with David Dinkins and did work back in the day. Still did work. I mean, really encouraged me like, one of those persons I call, he'd call me. He was in a nursing home recently, and he literally asks for me. And Evelyn and I went down to see him. I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that she pushed me to go. She always does. And I appreciate that. But please keep Lorraine Royal in your prayers. Okay. I'm still looking. I'm still got my eyes open. I'm looking to see what you're going to say. Looking to see what you're going to say. Can we take an early break? Give you a chance to think about what I'm saying. I'll go to my shared screen, and we'll go through this, and then we'll go from there. How's that? Okay. We'll read the article again. So there you have it. It's there for you to see, and we'll go from here, and then I'll be back shortly.
Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting, LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan. You need the trustees to be trained. You need biblical economic training. You need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. In honor of last week's Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebration, I want to share with you some of his thoughts.
I feel a sense of inadequacy as a symbol. It is never easy for one to accept the role of symbolism without going through constant moments of self-examination. And I must confess that there are moments when I begin to wonder whether I am adequate, or whether I'm able to face all of the challenges and even the responsibilities of this particular position. I don't think anyone in a situation like this can go through it without confronting moments of real fear. But I have always had something that gave me an inner sense of assurance and an inner sense of security in the final analysis. Even in the moments of loneliness, something ultimately came to remind me that that in this struggle, because it is basically right, because it is a thrust forward to achieve something not just for Negro people, but something that will save the whole of mankind. And when I have come to see these things, I always felt a sense of cosmic companionship, so that the loneliness and the fear have faded away because of a greater feeling of security, because of commitment to a moral ideal. Well, in my days in Atlanta as a child, there was a pretty strict system of segregation. For instance, I could not use the swimming pool, so that for a long, long time I could not go in swimming until the YMCA was built, a Negro YMCA, and they had a swimming pool there. But certainly a Negro child in Atlanta could not go to any public park. I could not go to the so-called white schools. There were separate schools. And I attended a high school in Atlanta, which was the only high school for Negroes in the city. And this was a real problem because in Atlanta there are more than 200,000 Negroes. In many of the stores downtown, to take another example, I could not go to a lunch counter to buy a hamburger, a cup of coffee, or something like that. I could not attend any of the theaters. Only there were one or two Negro theaters. They were very small, but they did not get the main pictures. If they got them, they were 2 years late or 3 years late. So that by and large, there was a very strict system of segregation, and there was nothing called racial integration at that time in Atlanta. Well, I started out as a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama, which is a state that adjoins the state of Georgia. After I finished my graduate work in Boston, I returned to Montgomery to pastor a church. After I had been in Montgomery about a year, we had the problem there of facing many indignities and injustices on the city buses. And on the 5th of December, in 1955, a Negro woman was arrested, Mrs. Rosa Parks, for refusing to give up her seat for a boarding white male passenger. I think I could say safely that more than 99% of the Negro people of Montgomery rose up with a bit of indignation, a righteous indignation, I would say. And this led to the bus boycott. The Negro citizens decided not to ride the buses until these conditions were changed. They asked me to serve as a spokesman and the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, and from this time I found myself in a leadership position in the civil rights struggle.
And the bus boycott was, of course, a startling success under your leadership.
Yes, we struggled for 381 days, but at the end of that, we returned to thoroughly integrated buses, and they are integrated today in Montgomery.
And now, Matters of Faith family, the article, Restoration, from one transgressor to another. That article can be found in all of my social media links. That's Facebook, that's X, that is Blue Sky, that's LinkedIn, and anywhere else where you can Google me, you can find the article. I also sent it to many of you individually. But if you didn't, you can also find it in the Yonkers Insider, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. The column is also carried in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column is also carried in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter. Restoration, from one transgressor to another. Psalms 51 verses 10 through 13, New King James Version. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me by your generous spirit. Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners shall be converted to you. Restoration, from one transgressor to another. King David thought he got away with having an adulterous relationship with Bathsheba that resulted in her getting pregnant. To cover his tracks, he had her husband Uriah positioned on the front line of the war where he was killed. He then married Bathsheba, thinking that would shield him further. He was right. No one knew the treacherous things he did. In the eye of the public, he was viewed as a just and upright king. But there was a set of eyes watching him that he failed to consider. Those were the eyes that sees everything and everybody. Those were the eyes of God. 2 Samuel 11:27 tells us, quote, the thing David did displeased the Lord, unquote. Chapter 12 verses 1 through 15 picks up with the prophet Nathan, who was sent to meet with King David. In that meeting, Nathan informs David that God knew what he did and that he was going to be punished because of his dastardly deeds. The 51st Psalm shows David confessing his sin, grieving his actions, and asking the Lord to forgive him. It is an intense plea that includes David asking the Lord to create within him a clean heart and renew a steadfast spirit within him. David is asking for a gut rehab, an entire transformation, inside and out. Quote, restore to me the joy of your salvation, unquote, references the series of sin he committed that resulted in him being spiritually demolished and losing the joy of his salvation. He hadn't lost God's love, that is, his soul's salvation, but he lost the joy that comes along with knowing that your soul has been saved. Restoration is a renewal, a rejuvenation, a rebirth. David was asking to be made over and the joy of his salvation restored. Being held up by the generosity of the Lord's graciousness, he commits to teaching other sinners of his love and graciousness, and they too would come to believe in the Lord as he had. A restoration of epic proportion is what David requested. That restoration would not only benefit David, but would be shared by one transgressor to another in the centuries to follow. Millions and millions of transgressors, would have the joy of their salvation restored, and they too would teach other transgressors the Lord's way. This lesson is for you. Now, it's your turn. Be blessed. And now, here's my question, and I am making an assumption. Now that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? Let me ask that question again. And again, I am making an assumption. Now that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressions the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? You know me, Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell. Sometimes I get the opportunity to hang out with the governor, sometimes with the attorney general and the Bronx Borough president, sometimes with the mayor. Sometimes I'm with the John L. Scott Associate Ministers Auxiliary, and sometimes the New York State Chaplain Workers Task Force Incorporated. Sometimes I'm with friends going back in the day, but most times I'm with my wife, Evelyn White Russell. So, Matters of Faith family, without further ado, here we go for part 2 with Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell and you.
Well, I'm back, and I'm glad to be here. I'm going to stop my share. No, I'm going to leave it up for a minute, let you see these things. I'm going to show you these pictures. I want you to see these. If you didn't notice, I'm going to see if I can make it a little larger just so you can see them. But the picture to the upper left, that's myself and Evelyn. The picture just below it, the New York State Chaplain Workers Task Force, where I have the wonderful opportunity of serving as their chief and founder of the organization. This was all of our officers and our keynote speaker. One would be the one who gave the oath of office. That's Judge. Oh my gosh, just popped out of my head. Judge Elizabeth Taylor. The officer in the center is Chief Jeff Madry, the former chief of police department for the New York City Police Department, and the others are all of the officers. The center picture is Governor Kathy Hochul. Standing behind her is Reverend Helen Wingate. The upper picture here you'll see are the associate ministers of John Luster Scott Associate Ministers Auxiliary, some of them. The picture to my right of that would be myself and Mayor Adams. Down below, you see a picture of myself, Borough President Vanessa Gibson, and State Attorney General Tish James. And to the right of that picture on the side, that is me, my dear friend Dexter Waiters, and my brother Benny Monday. And that was back in the day. We were in college and we were out having ourselves a nice time and we were all dressed to the nines. So sometimes I'm doing all of that too. So every one of us has a past, but God knows we have a future. Praise the Lord. Stop my share. Now it's just you and I. I want to ask you again, if you don't mind, if you would simply take time out to answer the question that I've placed on the table tonight for you. I really want to get your feedback. I want to hear what you have to say, and I want to read what you have written. So my question, now that you've been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? And by the way, the clip that I played was a clip on Dr. King talking about overcoming fear, to do the work that the Lord has assigned to his hands. Okay, so now I'm back with you. My brothers and my sisters, welcome back to Matters of Faith, the radio show. I'm so glad that you have taken the time out of your calendar and off your schedule to join me tonight. We're talking about the article, Restoration from One Transgressor to Another. I've asked the question. I don't have a guest tonight to bounce off of, so it's you that I'm bouncing off of, and I've asked that you would either answer the question or ask a question or make a comment so that I don't have to be a talking head tonight and I can share with you in the way in which you want me to share with you anything that I can. Is that fair? I think that's fair. I think it's fair, but just in case, I want you to think it's fair. So let me share with you. I think I shared this a couple of weeks ago. A question that was asked about important people in your life. This was done by Charles Schultz. Peanuts, Charlie Brown. He said, name the 5 wealthiest people in the world. Number 2, name the last 5 winners of the Miss America pageant. Number 3, name 10 people who have won the Nobel or Pulitzer Prize. Number 4, name the last half dozen Academy Award winners for Best Actor and Actress. Number 5, name the last decade's worth of World Series winners. How'd you do? Okay. Truth is, few of us ever remember any of that stuff. That's trivia stuff. Most of us don't remember the superstars of yesterday. The applause fade, the awards tarnish, and the achievements are forgotten. But here's another quiz. And I want you to think about this, because when I think about restoration, think about this. List a teacher who helped you in school. Name 3 friends who supported you through a difficult time. Name 5 people who have taught you something worthwhile. Think of 1 person who makes you feel appreciated and special. And number 5, picture 5 people you enjoy spending time with. Which one did you find easier to do? The first list or the second? The first or the second? Well, that's how you show up in people's lives, by the way. You show up in people's lives by helping them to be restored. So a teacher who helped you in school was in the reconstruction business. 3 friends who supported you through a difficult time were helping in the construction period. 5 people who have taught you something worthwhile were carpenters in your reconstruction and restoration process. A person who makes you feel appreciated and special is constantly on duty to help you in the construction process. Picture 5 people you enjoy spending time with. Maybe the architects, the carpenters, the electricians of your life that's helping you to rebuild, to be restored. They're there for you. That's how you contribute to other people's lives and help them to become one transgressor to another. Today it's my building. Tomorrow it could be yours. We ought to be there for others so that they can be there for us. And even if they're not, be there for them. Here's a challenge for you. Do something good for someone. If they find out that it's you, it doesn't count. You have to do it again with someone else. Do something good for someone. And if they find out that it was you, it doesn't count. You have to do it again with someone else. That's the challenge. Do something good all the time, every day. Every day. Let me give you, I'll give you one that Saturday, I felt good about this one. I had to go to FedEx and I got there a little early, didn't open until 10. And I drove up, it was about 9:45. And there was a young lady standing in front of the door. And it was probably about 17 degrees on Saturday morning. And I looked and I said, they're not open yet. She kind of shivered no. So I asked her, would you mind if I offered you to sit in my car until they opened? And she said, thank you. And she got into the car and she was freezing. And I'm so glad that I didn't do the other thing that I thought to do first, but I went to FedEx. I followed that instinct. And when I got there, there was a young lady standing there who was just freezing and would have had to have waited another 15 minutes in the cold. And when we finished doing what we had to do, I asked her, where are you going? And she says, I'm going to Brooklyn. I said, I'm not going there. How do you get there? She says, I have to take the train. And I said, well, I'm going to, she said, you have to take the number 4 train. I said, well, I'm going to 125th Street and Lexington Avenue. I can drop you off at the train station. She said, oh, that would be so nice. And so she told me she might be on tonight. So she might be on tonight. And if you are, it was my pleasure to be of service to you. It was a pleasure. And I thank God that I was able to be there for you. Andrew says, I have a pastor friend named Ernest Barnett, who was my facilitator at the Vietnam veteran group. He was my carpenter. He's also a good friend of mine. He taught me a lot of things about God. I now begin to talk to other people about God, and I tell them how God loves them. Yeah, that's great. That's great. See, that's paying it forward, you know. That's paying it forward. Paying it forward. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to give back, when you're able to just share with them the goodness of the Lord, the goodness of the Lord. You know, when I got the car that I have, I asked the Lord to give it to me. I prayed about it. I laid hands on it, and the Lord delivered it to me. It wasn't this car that I'm driving now, but I've had 6 just like it. And the Lord didn't stop at the first car. He just kept giving them to me. And my prayer was that I would use this vehicle to be a blessing to others. I could not think of a blessing that was better than what happened on Saturday morning. Everything. God uses everything. Christ is there all the time, looking for an opportunity to be gracious to you so that you can be gracious to others. It's the building process. It's the restoration process that he's engaging us in. Whew. I get chills when I think about that. Oh, I see you, cuz. I see you. Margaret, thank you for being with me tonight. I appreciate you. Yeah, Jackie Smith's name came up, but that's all right. That's all right. I'm glad it's you. And if it was him, I'd be glad it was him too. So God bless you. It's good to see you. Good to see you. I'm thinking about our other cousin, Calvin. Haven't spoken with him in a minute. I've got to reach out to him. Hope he's well. But man, I am just amazed at how the Lord uses us once he restores us. And sometimes even when we're not restored, he still uses us. You know, God can use a jackass if he wants to, and he does plenty of times. So I can tell you this, that we are bound to stay together, to build together, to grow together, to love one another. Because if we don't, everything that was promised to us in this last election will be coming our way. It's already started, and it's not going to stop. We have to stay together so that we can stick together. We have to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. The restoration process is just that. It's a process that we go through in order to get ready to stay ready. So I said it before. Dolly Parton said this, and I think she said it well. She says, find out who you are and do it on purpose. Don't just fall into it, but do it on purpose. The theme that I've given to the church for this year is strive and thrive in 2025. And I saw something I thought was quite interesting. Maya Angelou had written that surviving is important. Thriving is elegant. So I'm going to change that and say striving is critical. Thriving is the dance. When you learn how to dance, you thrive. Andrew says, I had to remember that God is first. I come second, and everybody else take a number. I like that. I like that. But there is that joy acronym, joy, J-O-Y. Jesus, others, yourself. Now we know we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. But when you have been restored, remember what Jesus told Peter? Once he brought Peter back in the fold and he forgave him, he told him, now go and do likewise for all of your people. Go and treat them likewise. Go and do for them what I've done for you. Help them to become. So, yes, if you're the best that you can be, then you can help others to be the best that they can be. I love that. I love that. I'm still thinking about that. Others take a number, though. I gotta tell you the truth. I'm thinking about that one. There were some things I've read. I read. I do a lot of reading. I think you guys know that already. Do a lot of reading, and a lot of things I read are motivational, inspirational, and just sort of gets me closer to knowing the Lord. I do a lot of devotional reading and things of that nature, and of course, I do a lot of writing too. But I read something about leadership, and this is interesting, and I think that Andrew has been saying this all night. Didn't say it in these words, but he's been saying it all night. It takes leaders to grow other leaders. It takes someone who's been restored to help others to be restored. It takes that kind of commitment. Now, granted, you don't always have to be or have an experience in something in order to help somebody else get through their experience. But if you have that experience and you don't share that experience with others, now that's just selfish. If you have a gift, you have to share that gift. It wasn't given to you just for your own benefit. Your gift was given to you to share with others. Did you get that? Your gift, the gift that you have, I don't care how many you have. Some people are multi-gifted, have gifts just oozing out of them. And some of them don't share with anybody. But you've been given gifts. And the gifts that God gives you are not so that you can lord it over others, but it's been given to you so that you can help others to get through whatever they're getting through, whatever they're going through. From one transgressor to another. That's the personal challenge in this article. One sentence, one verse. That's the challenging scripture in this text. I will teach transgressors your way. We like to read about David. We like to know that, David was, a treacherous guy. But he was also a man after God's own heart. Because when he repented, he meant it. Restoration. To rebuild something on the inside that shows up on the outside. I don't know about you, but I know about me. I want to be everything that the Lord created me to be. I want to do everything that he assigns to my hand. And I want to do it in a way that his name will be glorified. People will be edified. Satan and all of his demons will be terrified. The faith that I have in the God that I serve will be justified. And when everything is said and done, my soul will be sanctified. You might want to write that down. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite things that I say. I have a lot of those, but I just feel like, I'm like Dr. King. I just want to do God's will. I just want to, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I have done everything that I can, doing as much as I can to help somebody else. The Lord has gifted me. He's blessed me. What I don't have, probably don't need it. And if I do need it, he'll provide it according to his riches and glory. That's the promise, right? I trust him. He's been faithful to me since I gave my life to him. He hasn't left me nor forsaken me. I've been through some tough times, even after I've given my life, but that's okay. Tough times don't last. but tough people do. I don't know about you, but let me ask the question. Now that that you have been restored, how are you teaching other transgressors the Lord's ways and helping them to be converted? Well, for me, I try to be not so much of a talker as I am a quote unquote doer. James says, faith without works is dead. Be ye not only hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And I take those scriptures seriously. I take them very seriously because I want to, be a person of good reputation. That at least when someone talks about me, they'll have to talk about those things that I've been able to accomplish. And I don't mean accomplish like, oh, he made $1 million or none of that, but that I was consistent in being the person that God created me to be. That that you don't hear me cussing folks out, even though I feel like it sometimes. That you don't see me, in the street doing something that will be an embarrassment to God. Not to my fellow man, but to God. It's easy to do that, man. I've done that before. I've been there. I have done that, and sometimes I feel like doing it today. But I know that my feelings tell me lies. My feelings deceive me. So I don't listen to my feelings. I listen to my heart. Now I heard I read somewhere, the person, Cherie Barr, listen to what she said. This is interesting, right? She said, this is kind of interesting. She said, expecting life to treat you well because you are a good person is like expecting an angry bull not to charge because you are a vegetarian. Can I say that again? Expecting life to treat you well because you are a good person is like expecting an angry bull not to charge because you are a vegetarian. So here's what I'm saying to you, my brothers and my sisters, using this quote as a backdrop. We have to work on not just being a good person, but literally putting ourselves in a position so that we're prepared for whatever comes our way. Because just because you're doing good things, just because you're a good person, just because you're putting forth your best effort, does not mean that you will not encounter trials, tribulations, and setbacks and opposition. In fact, it may mean just the opposite. You may get more of it because you're a good person, because you are a doing person, because you are a loving person, because you are a kind person, because you care about humanity. You may get it even worse. But we played Dr. King earlier, right? And Dr. King understood that nonviolence is a display of love. And in his displaying of love caused him a lot of trouble. He was beaten, he was thrown in jail, had dogs sicked on him, he had fire hoses pointed at him. He was killed. Sometimes, because you are that good person, you have been restored. See, now you have to show others how to do that and do it in a way that they won't retaliate against those who come, the opposition that comes against them. But they'll figure out another way to love the hell out of them because you've been restored. You've been given the new lease. You got a new way of living, a new way of thinking. I got a new attitude. That's what Patti LaBelle says. I got a new attitude. So my brothers and my sisters, I still want you to answer the question. If there's something that you want to tell me, if there's something that you want to say, I appreciate it. I'd like to hear it, because again, I'm talking tonight, but I'd much rather hear from you. I'd much rather hear from you, and then bounce off of that, and then we can talk some more. I'll give you I'll tell you, give you a heads up at about 9:45, there and about, I'm going to go into my close, because the Lord's giving me a few things I want to share with you tonight. It's going to take a few extra minutes, but because I don't have a guest, I can do that. And it's easy. I don't have to worry about them taking up that time. So I want to make sure that we end on time, because we started on time. We want to make sure that we do exactly what it is that the Lord has called us to do, and do it in a way that respects your time as well. Because I know that you have sacrificed your time to be with us tonight, and I appreciate that. I really do. And I want to make sure that we end in a way that will be beneficial for everybody, so that you can go on and do what else you have to do. And by the way, we want to congratulate the football teams that are going to the Super Bowl. I think the Kansas City Chiefs, for the third year in a row, they get a chance to repeat 3 times. And the Eagles, who have Saquon Barkley, who was traded away from the Giants, which is where I live. So now they're going to go to the Super Bowl, and he scored 3 touchdowns. So and I haven't even been following football that heavily this year, but I do know that. And so we want to congratulate them and pray that the Lord will bless them, and they'll have a good showing on their display of athletic prowess on the day of the Super Bowl. Okay. Yep. Listen to this. This is interesting. Julie Cameron. What we really want to do is what we really were meant to do. When we do what we are meant to do, money comes to us, doors open for us, we feel useful, and the work we do feels like play to us. So we say a lot of times, you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. I love doing this. This is one of the great things that the Lord has given me to do, which is to write and then to share on matters of faith, to dig a little deeper, to go a little bit deeper in terms of what it means in tonight's acumen to be restored, and then to become a transmitter that you can then help others to become restored as well. And dig a little deeper. What does that scripture mean? And in my summation tonight, I'm going to go a little bit more. I'm going to get a little deeper into that, so that it's maybe a little bit clearer. Okay. All right. Now let's see if there's anything else I found that I wanted to share with you that I thought was pretty interesting that I read. Okay, let's talk about motivation. What motivates you? How do you get to the place where you will seek the restoration that you need? Let me tell you this story. A long time ago, someone presented 2 baby eagles to a king as a gift. This breed of eagles was famous for being excellent flyers, and the king had never seen such a magnificent pair before. Pleased with the gift, he hired an experienced caretaker to take care of them. But after some time, both eagles grew to be quite big and looked more beautiful than ever. One day the king said to the caretaker, "I want to see them fly." Caretaker gave a signal, and both eagles launched themselves upward. One eagle soared to the heights of the sky, but the other flew for only a few seconds and then landed on a branch in a nearby tree. The king was puzzled. Why does the one eagle fly so high and the other one just sits there? The caretaker said, "That's what they always do. The one races through the sky, but the other one just sits on that one branch and does nothing." The next day, the king announced from the palace that whoever could entice the eagle to fly higher than its mate would be richly rewarded with prizes. Many wise people came and tried to apply their knowledge to help the eagle, but no one was successful. And after a couple of weeks, the eagle would fly just a little and then return to the branch. The king was about to lose hope. Then one day, he looked out his window and saw both eagles soaring in the air. Excited, he ran to the caretaker. He said, "A man came this morning." The caretaker said, "He did it." The king asked the caretaker to bring the person to the palace. He turned out to be a local farmer. After presenting the reward, the king asked how he had accomplished his feat. "Your Highness, I'm just a simple farmer. I'm not smart like those scholars and wise men. I simply cut down the branch of the eagle that the eagle had a habit of sitting on. With no branch, he had no choice but to fly. And he flew very well." The moral of the story: we don't always realize what we're capable of achieving until we can no longer rely on what's easy and comfortable. How you like that? That's pretty cool, right? So sometimes, in order to get us to fly to our highest of heights, we have to have the branch cut from underneath us. So we don't have a place to perch. We have to soar. So God does that to us sometimes in his restoration process. He removes the branch. It's not there anymore. You have to fly. And when you learn to fly, you teach others how to do likewise. Or you get a saw and cut off their branch too. Which I think makes a great deal of sense. So yeah, I got you, and I got you, Andrew. So I cut the branch down. That's good. I had to get off the branch too. Everybody has a branch somewhere that they like to land on. Sometimes it's another person. They lean on them, they depend on them, and they are enabled by them. Sometimes the best thing that you can do for another to help them in their transformation process is to take the branch away. Or as Jesus says, remove the stone. Remove the stone. Let the dead man out. Let the dead man out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do early. I'm going to share my screen again. And we're gonna go a little early because I want to make sure that I get all of this in before we get to the close of time today. And this is some good stuff. I shared this in my sermon on yesterday, so I really want to share it with you. I really want you to get this. So there's an interesting book that you should take the time to read called Leading with a Limp by Dan B. Allender. In it, he says, if you're a leader, you're in the battle of your life. Nothing comes easily. Enemies outnumber allies, and the terrain keeps shifting under your feet. That's always the case. From a theological perspective, a leader can be anyone occupying a role that has oversight over people. Some leadership roles are positioned or positional, while others are obtained by influence. But if Allender is correct, it doesn't matter how one attains the status of leader, they are in for the battle of their life. Let me share 10 things that will help you in your leadership to weather the storms that you will experience in your Christian walk. If you're a follower of Christ, if you're a follower of the way, you will have challenges in your life. There will be some storms. And in order for you to overcome those storms, win the battle that Allender says is the battle of your life, I'm going to give you 10 things. Now, you might want to write these down. These are good. You might want to write these down. Number one, focus on how to make a difference. Focus on how to make a difference. Number two, get in touch with your values. Get in touch with your values. Number 3, act on purpose. Act on purpose. Number 4, be purposeful in every domain, not just the area that you are called as a leader. Be purposeful in every domain, not just the area you are called as leader. Number 5, encourage others to find their purpose. Encourage others to find their purpose. Number 6, seek the goal established by the master leader, the Lord God Almighty. Seek the goal established by the master leader, the Lord God Almighty. Number 7, learn from your failures. Learn from your failures. Number 8, be flexible. Rigidity breaks. Be flexible like bamboo. Bend, but don't break. Be flexible. Number 9, whatever you do and wherever you lead, always ask yourself this one question. What would I dare to do if I knew it would be impossible for me to fail? What would I dare to do if I knew it would be impossible for me to fail? Now I'm going to add something to that. As a Christian, as a follower of Christ, you cannot fail. Because the worst thing that could happen to you in your walk in life is that you die. And for a person who follows Christ, that ain't so bad. Because he says, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I'd have told you, I'm going to prepare a place for you. So if you can't fail, what would you dare to do? Number 10, understand that leadership is the application of basic principles at a higher level. Let me give you that again. Understand that leadership is the application of basic principles at a higher level. I got one more. One more thing. Some leaders must be restored because they've lost their way. Number 11, some leaders must be restored because they have lost their way. David was a great example of a leader who lost his way. Restoration from one transgressor to another. God said that David was a man after his own heart. David was a man who inspired the story that practically every child from most every culture and every background is familiar with, David and Goliath. David was the hero in the eyes of his countrymen, as he was the one who slew the giant Goliath and was paraded about as the warrior who killed tens of thousands of their enemies. David was favored by God and crowned king over all of Jerusalem and Judah. And this is how God sees you when you understand that leadership is the application of basic principles at a higher level. And these public displays of adoration and acclaim were well deserved. Yet there was another side of David that few knew about. David was privately a liar, an adulterer, a murderer, and a conniver. I shared the story of David with my congregations, or two congregations yesterday, both Grace Gospel Church and the Evangelical Church of God on yesterday. Do you remember the full story of David? Well, I want you to listen. Close your eyes if you want, and let your imagination paint a picture for you. But don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep. 2 Samuel, beginning at chapter 11, going into the beginning part of chapter 12. When that time of year came around again, the anniversary of the Ammonite aggression, David dispatched Joab and his fighting men to Israel in full force to destroy the Ammonites for good. They laid siege of Rabbah, but David stayed in Jerusalem. One late afternoon, David got up from taking his nap and was strolling on the roof of the palace. From his vantage point on the roof, he saw a young woman bathing. The woman was stunningly beautiful. David sent to her or asked about her, and was told, "Isn't this Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent his agents to get her. After she arrived, he went to bed with her. This occurred during the time of purification, following her period. Then she returned home. Before long, she realized she was pregnant. She sent word to David, "I'm pregnant." David then got in touch with Joab. "Send Uriah the Hittite to me." Joab sent him. When he arrived, David asked him for news from the front, how things were going with Joab and the troops and with the fighting. Then he said to Uriah, "Go home, have a refreshing bath and a good night's rest." After Uriah left the palace, an informant of the king was sent after him. But Uriah didn't go home. He slept the night at the palace entrance along with the king's servants. David was told that Uriah had not gone home. He asked Uriah, "Didn't you just come off a hard trip? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah replied to David, "The ark is out there with the fighting men of Israel and Judah in tents. My master Joab and his servants are roughing it out in the fields. So how can I go home and eat and drink and enjoy my wife? On your life, I will not do it." "All right," said David, "have it your way. Stay the day, and I'll send you back tomorrow." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem the rest of the day. The next day, David invited him to eat and drink with him, and David got him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah again went out and slept with his master's servants. He didn't go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In the letter, he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front lines where the fighting is the fiercest. Then pull back and leave him exposed so that he's sure to be killed." So Joab, holding the city under siege, put Uriah in a place where he knew there were fierce enemy fighters. When the city's defenders came out to fight Joab, some of David's soldiers were killed, including Uriah the Hittite. Joab sent David a full report on the battle. He instructed the messenger, "After you have given the king a detailed report of the battle, if he flares in anger, say, 'And by the way, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" Joab's messenger arrived in Jerusalem and gave the king a full report. He said, "The enemy was too much for us. They advanced on us in the open field, and we pushed them back to the city gate. But then arrows came hot and heavy on us from the city wall, and 18 of the king's soldiers died." When the messenger completed his report of the battle, David got angry at Joab. He vented it on the messenger. "Why did you get so close to the city? Didn't you know you'd be attacked from the wall? Didn't you remember how Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, got killed? Wasn't it a woman who dropped a millstone on him from the wall and crushed him at the Bez? Why did you go close to the wall?" By the way, Joab's messenger, "Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." Then David told the messenger, "Oh, I see. Tell Joab, don't trouble yourself over this. War kills. Sometimes one, sometimes another. You never know who's next. Redouble your assault on the city and destroy it. Encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she grieved for her husband. When the time of mourning was over, David sent someone to bring her to his house. She became his wife and bore him a son. But God was not pleased with what David had done. Chapter 12 now. Listen to me. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. Nathan said to him, "There were two men in the same city, one rich, the other poor. The rich man had huge flocks of sheep, herds of cattle. The poor man had nothing but one little female lamb, which he had brought and raised. It grew up with him and his children as a member of the family. It ate off his plate and drank from his cup and slept on his bed. It was like a daughter to him. One day, a traveler dropped in on the rich man. He was too stingy to take an animal from his own herds or flocks to make a meal for his visitor. So he took the poor man's lamb and prepared a meal to set before his guest. David exploded with anger. As surely as God lives, he said to Nathan, the man who did this ought to be lynched. He must repay for the lamb 4 times over for his crime and his stinginess. You're the man, said Nathan. And here's what God, the God of Israel, has to say to you. I made you king over Israel. I freed you from the fist of Saul. I gave you your master's daughter and other wives to have and to hold. I gave you both Israel and Judah. And if that hadn't been enough, I'd have gladly thrown in much more. So why have you treated the word of God with brazen contempt, doing this great evil? You murdered Uriah the Hittite, then took his wife as your wife. Worse, you killed him with an Amorite sword. And now, because you treated God with such contempt and took Uriah the Hittite's wife as your wife, killing and murder will continually plague your family. This is God speaking, remember. I'll make trouble for you out of your own family. I'll take your wives from right out in front of you. I'll give them to some neighbor, and he'll go to bed with them openly. You did your deed in secret. I'm doing mine with the whole country watching. David thought he had gotten away with sin until Nathan showed up and exposed him. Nathan was also a man of God to whom God revealed the sins of David that he had committed. To say that God was displeased would not be strong enough. God was furious. You know he was because of the story that Nathan told him about the man who offered a stranger a lamb from someone else's pen and not his own. That was a perfect example of David's taking Uriah's wife and having the man killed. Privately, David was a liar, an adulterer, a murderer, and a conniver. My brothers and my sisters, my Matters of Faith family, don't let your desires, your flesh, your lusts, write a check that could cost you your soul. You must have integrity, which is defined by the things you do when no one is watching. The 51st Psalm shows David confessing his sin, grieving his actions, and asking God to forgive him. It is an impassioned plea that includes David asking the Lord to create with him a clean heart and renew a steadfast spirit within him. David is asking for a gut rehab, an entire transformation inside and out. David's request, restore to me the joy of your salvation, references the series of sin he committed that resulted in him being spiritually demolished and losing the joy of his salvation. He had not lost God's love, his soul's salvation, but he lost the joy that comes along with knowing that your soul has been saved. David cried out for restoration. Restoration is renewal, rejuvenation, and rebirth. David was asking to be made over and the joy of his salvation restored. Being held by the generosity of God's grace, David commits to teaching other sinners of the love, the grace, the compassion of God, so that they too would come to believe in the Lord and be restored. David shared his transgression. David shared his restoration. Restoration from one generation to another, from one transgressor to another. A restoration of epic proportion is what David requested. That restoration would not only benefit David, but would be shared from one transgressor to another in the centuries to follow. Millions and millions of transgressors would have the joy of their salvation restored, and they would teach other transgressions the Lord's way. This lesson is for you. It's your turn. Share your restoration and let it go from one transgressor to another. I'm so honored that you took time out of your very busy schedule to join me tonight. You are truly a supporter of this ministry, and I appreciate you for it. Tonight, we really drill deep so that we can consider and understand how to share in the restoration process from one transgressor to another. Keep Matters of Faith on your calendar and ask your family, friends, colleagues, and associates to find us, like us, and share us. Now, please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company, J. Law and R Consulting, LLC. For all your church financial needs, call 718-328-8096 or email us at jlawrenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. It's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Matters of Faith, the book. I've been talking about it tonight. This is the book. If you don't have the book, you can use my Cash app to obtain it. $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. I will make sure that you get it and I will sign it. Or you can get the ebook, which is you can get it at www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Better Mag Magazine, www.abettermag.com. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50. And please don't forget, ma'am, please don't forget, sir, subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel, this YouTube channel right here. Telephone, text, email, message, any way you do it, but tell a friend to join us regularly on Matters of Faith on Monday nights. We are now live on Matters of Faith, the YouTube channel. We also drop each episode on our Matters of Faith and the J. Law and Russell Facebook groups. Please, ma'am, please, sir, subscribe, like, and share this Matters of Faith YouTube channel so that you don't miss a single episode of Matters of Faith because you did not subscribe, like, and or share the Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Now, the Lord bless you, the Lord keep you, the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you grace. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Join us next week for our first broadcast in February in this new year of 2025. And my guest will be Reverend Brian Spearman from South Carolina. You don't want to miss this. Trust me. Reverend Brian Spearman is a wonderful guest. He's been with me before, and he will be with us again. So, ma'am, sir, please join us. And don't forget, please share this information with others as you go forth. Now, if no one has told you this today, let me be the first to say that I love you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. So get used to it. So God bless you. Good night.